We continue the news in West Africa, where Liberia's main opposition presidential candidate, Joseph Boakai, is rallying the support of other smaller parties ahead of a likely runoff against incumbent President George Weah. The provisional results from 99.9% of the country's 5,890 polling stations show that none of the two leading candidates has garnered more than 50% of the votes to be declared winner. Weah currently has 43.8% of the vote, with Boakai on 43.5% following the elections on October the 10th. The nation's election commission is yet to declare a runoff. Now, joining me live from Liberia to discuss this is Augustine S.M. Tamba, head of Secretariat Liberia Elections Observant Network. One welcome to you, Augustine, and thanks for joining us on the news.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me this evening on your newsline.
Now, Augustine, as an election observer, what are the key factors you consider when assessing the credibility and fairness of the electoral process in Liberia? What's your assessment of the just concluded presidential elections in your country?
Well, thank you. As an institution and in the entire process, we were able to assess all of the phases of these elections. So on election day, we observed the opening process, the voting process, and the counting process using a specific checklist by our observers. So our institution deployed 904 short-term observers across statistically sampled areas. And so our assessments show, based on the report we gathered, that the opening processes, the voting processes, and the counting processes were all adhered to in terms of the evaluation that were conducted through the checklist our short-term observers reported on. So all of these processes were in the high 90s, and based on that assessment, we issued a statement stating our observation in terms of the adherence of the National Election Commission to the basic procedures as prescribed by their own regulations.
Now, Augustine, in your opinion, what impact can the rallying of support from smaller parties, because there were 19 candidates in that election, what impact can the rallying support from smaller parties by the opposition candidate have on the dynamics of the runoff elections? Do you think there might be correlations or delays that might happen before we get to the runoff elections?
There will obviously be alignment and realignment of political parties in the runoff elections, and based on what we saw happening in the first round of elections, the runoff elections are going to take both ethnic and political, ethnic and regional dimensions. Most of the presidential candidates who were contesting in these elections found themselves one way or the other in one of the regions and from the two leading political parties. So what we're going to eventually see happening in the runoff election is the formation of this coalition on the basis of ethnic alignment and regional alignment. And obviously that is going to play, that is going to have an effect on the runoff election, depending on which one of the parties are able to rally the support of all of the other political parties who did not make it for the runoff election will determine the outcome of the runoff election. Because according to our constitution, the first round of election was on an absolute majority basis.
Yes.
That means that for a political party to have been declared a winner, you must have obtained 50% plus one vote. Unfortunately, none of the political parties obtained that required threshold. Now moving towards the runoff, it requires a simple majority. And to rally support of political parties, it must be on the basis of what each of these outstanding political parties will tell the smaller parties or parties who did not make it to the runoff election. So it will interplay eventually into the runoff. But as our analysis around the first round of the election showed, the runoff elections will take ethnic and regional dimensions, which I think is hugely a factor in our elections.
Now, Augustine, a very important question here, but before we begin to wrap up, how important is it for the National Elections Commission to ensure transparency and accuracy in declaring, I beg your pardon, the results of the elections, especially when the margin between the two leading candidates, it's so close?
I think that is very important for the National Election Commission, and I think the National Election Commission is under immense public pressure at this point to ensure that the will of the Liberian people will be announced as the ballots will be cast during the runoff election. One of the challenges that the commission has is that every political party, or at least the two political parties that are in the runoff, were declaring in the first round that they were going to have a one-round victory. Now that the results show that they are neck to neck, it's even putting more pressure on the National Election Commission. So I think the National Election Commission will have that obligation to ensuring that results that will be announced by that commission or by the commission must reflect the will and pleasure of the people, because anything short of that, anything short of not announcing the will and pleasure of the people, the tensions are just high in our country. Supporters of these different political parties are just in hard motion, and something might just trickled from there. So the confidence level from the National Election Commission must be enhanced by publicly communicating the actions and every other step that the commission is going to be taking in this round of elections.
Thank you very much, Augustine Tamba, for your contribution to the program. Do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.